You stand in the dim torchlight of a Theban palace corridor, the air thick with the cloying stench of unguents failing to mask the underlying rot of festering flesh wounds. Your nostrils assaulted by the metallic tang of blood mingled with the sour reek of untreated infections that seep from the young pharaoh's bandaged limbs. Around you, servants whisper in hushed terror as Tutankhamun, barely 18, collapses against a golden throne, his clubbed foot twisting grotesquely beneath him, his elongated skull throbbing with hydrocephalic pressure that makes his eyes bulge like overripe fruits ready to burst, while his sister wife, Inkhesenemen, presses a cloth to his cleft palate, where saliva mixes with pus from chronic inflammation, revealing the horrifying truth that this god-king's divine bloodline, preserved through generations of sibling unions, has twisted his body into an anatomical monstrosity unfit for the throne he claims by birthright. The walls echo with his labored breaths, each one a rattle of scoliosis-compressed lungs, as courtiers avert their gaze from the protruding feminine hips and swollen breasts that betray hormonal chaos born of inbred genes. And in this moment of visceral revulsion, you realize the sacred marriages meant to purify royal essence have instead brewed a genetic poison devouring Egypt's rulers from within. This scene, drawn from the shadowed annals of Egypt's 18th dynasty, unveils the catastrophic underbelly of pharaonic power, with a pursuit of divine purity through incestuous unions birthed not gods, but grotesque parodies of humanity whose afflictions rippled through empires. The ancient Egyptians exalted their pharaohs as incarnations of Horus, mandating sibling marriages to concentrate celestial blood, yet this theological imperative spawned a lineage riddled with congenital horrors that historians long sanitized in gilded tombs and idealized statuary. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. What follows is a relentless excavation of Egypt's royal genetic disaster, beginning with the New Kingdom's 18th dynasty and escalating through the Ptolemaic era, revealing how inbreeding's insidious grip malformed bodies, deranged minds, and toppled dynasties in a cascade of medical and political calamities. The 18th dynasty's pharaohs, ascending around 1550 before the Common Era, institutionalized royal incest as a bulwark against dilution of their godlike essence. But this practice ignited a genetic inferno that consumed their progeny in waves of deformity and disease. Amenhotep III, father to the revolutionary Akhenaten, wed his own daughter Cinnamon alongside his chief wife Tai, forging a chain of consanguineous bonds that funneled recessive mutations into the royal vein like venom from a sacred SP. Contemporary inscriptions boast of these unions as divine reenactments of Osiris and Isis's sibling matrimony. Yet beneath the pomp lurked anatomical aberrations, elongated crania pressing against fragile brains, misaligned jaws grinding teeth to stubs, and skeletal frailties that turned god-kings into cripples reliant on ebony canes and priestly deceptions. Medical papyri from the era, such as the Edwin Smith Scroll, catalog surgical desperations for cleft palates and clubbed feet, afflictions clustered unnaturally among the elite, where brother-sister pairings amplified lethal alleles with merciless efficiency. One high priest's diary fragment, unearthed in Karnak, laments a princeling's divine trials, manifesting as hydrocephalus, where cerebrospinal fluid bloated the skull into a pulsating orb, evoking not Horus's falcon grace, but a malformed vessel for eternal suffering. Akhenaten, born Amenhotep for around 1353 before the Common Era, embodied this genetic maelstrom in his elongated physique, a living testament to the horrors of accumulated inbreeding that twisted his form into an androgynous enigma. Artistic reliefs from Amarna depict him with pendulous breasts, wide hips, and spindle-thin limbs, features once attributed to stylistic exaggeration, but now linked by modern geneticists to conditions like aromatase excess syndrome, where inbred hormonal imbalances flooded his body with estrogen, fostering feminine traits in a male frame destined for the throne. His skull, stretched unnaturally long, suggested craniosynostosis, a premature fusion of cranial sutures that warped bone growth, while his protruding abdomen hinted at metabolic disorders festering in overtaxed organs. DNA extracted from the KV-55 mummy, confirmed as Akhenaten's through mitochondrial matching with his mother Tai, reveals a cocktail of recessive genes amplified by his parents' close kinship. Amenhotep III and Tai's shared grandparents, condensing defects like a vice on fragile chromosomes. Contemporary observers, including Assyrian diplomats, whispered of the pharaoh's womanly gait and falsetto voice, symptoms of androgen insensitivity perhaps, where his body rebelled against its own testosterone, rendering the sun god's avatar a eunuch-like figure cloaked in royal regalia. Nefertiti, Akhenaten's half-sister and consort, bore the same inbred scars, her iconic bust masking a reality of dental malocclusion and cranial deformation that modern CT scans of related mummies confirm as familial curses. Their union produced 6 daughters, each etched with the dynasty's genetic stigma: elongated heads, overbites, and frail constitutions that claimed lives prematurely, as evidenced by the mummified fetuses in Tutankhamun's tomb showing similar anomalies. One daughter, Meketaten, died amid rumors of a pregnancy by her father, a desperate bid for a male heir that underscored the dynasty's incestuous desperation. Her tomb paintings show a birth scene shrouded in grief, the infant's form hinting at lethal deformities incompatible with life. Akhenaten's radical Latinism, abolishing polytheism for sun disk worship, may have stemmed from neurological torments. Temporal lobe epilepsy induced by inbreeding, manifesting in visionary seizures that he interpreted as divine mandates, his brain's misfiring circuits birthing a heresy that alienated priests and subjects alike. Graffiti from workers' villages mocks him as the mad one who dances like a woman, a cruel echo of his genetic plight that eroded his authority, setting the stage for dynastic unraveling. Tutankhamun, offspring of Akhenaten and his full sister, identified as the younger Lady Mummy through DNA kinship analysis, emerged as inbreeding's most poignant victim, his brief reign a symphony of physical agonies that belied his boy-king facade. Born around 1341 before the Common Era, he ascended at 9, his body already a battlefield of congenital wars, a cleft hard palate splitting his mouth into a perpetual wound, prone to infections that filled his sinuses with pus, the stench of which contemporaries masked with resins during audiences. His left foot, clubbed and necrotic from Freiberg disease, dragged like a dead weight, necessitating over 130 canes found in his tomb, some gilded to feign ceremonial purpose but worn from constant use. Scoliosis curved his spine into an S shape, compressing lungs and heart, each breath a labored wheeze amplified in palace silence, while his feminine hips and gynecomastia, swollen breasts, fueled court whispers of divine disfavor. Genetic testing on his mummy reveals multiple malaria strains, his inbred immune system too feeble to combat the parasite, alongside possible sickle cell traits that ravaged his bones, causing avascular necrosis where tissue died in excruciating increments. The pharaoh's dental horrors compounded his misery, with overbites and crowded teeth grinding in abscesses that swelled his cheeks like rotten pomegranates, pain radiating through his malformed jaw in waves that laudanum-laced wines barely dulled. Autopsy equivalents from his mummification show a fractured leg, the wound festering with embalming haste, suggesting a chariot fall exacerbated by his brittle bones, osteogenesis imperfecta perhaps, another inbred gift turning minor accidents fatal. His sister wife Enkhesenamun, sharing the bloodline's taint, bore 2 daughters who perished in utero or infancy, their tiny mummies revealing club feet and spina bifida, neural tube defects amplified by parental consanguinity. Court physicians, documented in the Ebers Papyrus, prescribed feudal remedies, herbal poultices for his suppurating sores, mechanical braces for his limp, while priests attributed his afflictions to Aten's wrath, a theological smokescreen for biological catastrophe. Tutankhamun's early death at 18, likely from septic shock amid a malarial crisis, left a vacuum filled by viziers like I, who married the widowed queen in a bid to legitimize rule. Her desperate letter to Hittite kings pleading for a foreign prince exposing the dynasty's genetic exhaustion. Beyond the 18th dynasty, the Ramesside era perpetuated inbreeding's legacy, with Ramses II wedding multiple daughters, his progeny numbering over 100, but riddled with shortened lifespans and skeletal anomalies unearthed in royal tombs. DNA from Ramses III and his son Penaware reveals shared haplotypes indicative of close kinship, their harem conspiracy murder plot perhaps fueled by resentment over inherited frailties. Ramses suffered arterial sclerosis and dental pathologies, his mummy's bent posture an echo of spinal defects. Familial epilepsy, posited in studies of the dynasty, may explain untimely deaths, seizures mistaken for divine possession, claiming heirs before maturity. These revelations, pieced from genomic data and osteological exams, paint a portrait of escalating dysfunction where each generation's unions concentrated mutations, from hormonal imbalances causing infertility to immunological weaknesses inviting plagues like the Hittite epidemic that decimated courts. The Ptolemaic dynasty, commencing in 305 before the Common Era under Ptolemy I Soter, amplified Egypt's incestuous traditions into a Hellenic nightmare, blending Greek pragmatism with pharaonic theology to forge a bloodline more entangled than a Gordian knot. Ptolemy II Philadelphus divorced his first wife to wed his sister Arsinoe II, establishing a precedent celebrated in coinage and cults, their union childless but politically potent, masking the genetic time bomb ticking within. Subsequent rulers escalated. Ptolemy IV Philopator married his sister Arsinoe III, producing Ptolemy V amid whispers of developmental delays, his reign marked by regency due to youthful incapacity, perhaps rooted in inbred neurology. By Ptolemy VI Philometor, sibling marriages were rote, his union with Cleopatra II yielding offspring whose physical descriptions in Roman accounts hint at exophthalmos, bulging eyes from Graves' disease, an autoimmune disorder clustered in consanguineous lines. Ptolemy VIII Physcon, grotesquely obese at over 400 pounds, epitomized inbreeding's metabolic ravages, his sister wives Cleopatra II and niece Cleopatra III bearing children amid court scandals of paranoia and violence. Historical texts like Polybius describe him as a menagerie of human monsters, his bulk requiring servants to hoist him onto thrones, breath labored from cardiac strain, while his mental instability, murdering relatives and purges, suggests personality disorders amplified by genetic homogeneity. Genetic calculations reveal that by Cleopatra VII, the dynasty's gene pool had shrunk to 6 unique ancestors over 5 generations, versus 32 in outbred lines, a bottleneck fostering mutations in fertility, immunity, and cognition. Ptolemy XII elites, her father, what his sister Cleopatra V, their progeny including Cleopatra VII, whose intelligence defied physical taints like protruding teeth and enlarged crania. Yet Roman sources like Plutarch note her masculine voice and unremarkable appearance, propaganda beauty veiling inbred flaws. Cleopatra VI's sibling marriages to Ptolemy XIII and XIV were farcical necessities, her brothers' youthful deaths, possibly from hemophilia or epilepsy, leaving her to navigate Roman alliances with Caesar and Antony, her children showing similar frailties that disqualified them as heirs. The dynasty's medical archives, preserved in Phaeum papyri, detail treatments for obesity with restrictive diets and for mental aberrations with herbal sedatives, physicians noting hereditary patterns without comprehending Mendelian mechanics. Psychological analyses retroactively diagnose borderline personalities and narcissistic disorders, where isolation bred megalomania. Ptolemy IV's sadism, including sibling murders, a manifestation of inbred amygdala dysfunction. Collateral victims abounded. Spouses endured miscarriages, Children like Ptolemy 15 Caesarion exhibited developmental lags, while subjects suffered under erratic rule, rebellions flaring against deformed tyrants as graffiti attests. As generations progressed, Ptolemaic afflictions intensified. Ptolemy IX's exile amid family feuds exposing fractures from paranoia, his sister wife Cleopatra IV's murder a symptom of escalating violence born of genetic entropy. Fertility plummeted, with high infant mortality, over half of royal births failing. Due to chromosomal anomalies like trisomies, mummies from the era showing fused vertebrae and cardiac defects. Desperate measures included multiple sibling unions. Ptolemy VIII wed mother, sister, and niece sequentially, convoluting lineages into webs where uncles were stepfathers, amplifying recessive lethals. Isolation deepened as trust eroded, spies monitoring kin for plots, a paranoia fueled by real threats from weakened heirs. Final collapse came with Cleopatra's suicide in 30 before the Common Era, her fleet's defection at Actium reflecting eroded loyalty to a bloodline perceived as cursed, Octavian's conquest sealing a dynasty undone by its own purity. Death scenes across these dynasties laid bare inbreeding's terminal grip. Tutankhamun's final hours a delirium of fever and fracture pain, his embalmers rushing to conceal burns and breaks with resins that failed to hide the skeletal wreckage. Akhenaten's demise, shrouded in mystery, likely involved epileptic convulsions amid religious backlash, his body interred hastily in KV 55, bones revealing osteoporotic fragility from hormonal chaos. Ptolemy VIII's death from organ failure, his bloated form collapsing under its weight, prompted macabre dissections noted in Herophilus's texts, revealing fatty livers and sclerotic arteries as hereditary plagues. Autopsies, in ancient terms, uncovered hydrocephalic brains and malformed hearts, evidence preserved in mummified viscera that modern scans dissect for genetic markers like U1B1, a haplotypes tracing African origins twisted by isolation. Post-mortem revelations pierced historical veils. Howard Carter's 1922 unearthing of Tutankhamun, exposing a cache of canes and fetal mummies that screamed of dynasty-wide defects, while DNA from 2010 confirmed sibling parentage and malarial comorbidities. Ptolemaic records, unearthed in Oxyrhynchus, detail cover-ups, idealized portraits masking obesity, with artists executed for realism, a propaganda machine that sanitized grotesqueries until Roman chroniclers like Strabo exposed the swollen-necked rulers. Preserved evidence endures in Berlin Museum's mummy collections, where genome-wide data from Abusir el-Melek mummies affirm Near Eastern affinities with minimal sub-Saharan shifts until post-Roman eras, underscoring inbreeding's isolation from broader gene flows. Returning to that Theban corridor where you witnessed Tutankhamun's agonized collapse, the weeping now resonates with profound irony, for what seemed a singular tragedy was the crescendo of millennia-spanning genetic hubris that humbled gods into mortals. These royal dysfunctions illuminate eternal themes. Power's illusion shattered by biology's inexorable laws, where attempts to defy diversity invite extinction, echoing in modern parallels like Habsburg Jaws or hemophiliac SARS. Humanity's quest for purity, whether in blood or ideology, breeds monstrosities that devour from within, leaving pyramids as hollow monuments to folly. Yet in this horror lies a haunting beauty, the fragility of empires etched in twisted bones, a final image of Cleopatra's ASP-bitten arm, venom coursing through veins thickened by ancestral sins, her eyes closing on a world forever altered by the price of divine ambition.